of high interest of coal from our country, how do you see this challenge? Is it a challenge or is it opportunity?
It's actually both. Now, Indonesia is the largest exporter of coal. And it has enough reserves to last them for the next 50 years or 100 years.
So what is the challenge?
The challenge basically is that we would like to produce more, and I think the government is taking every step to do that. But we do have natural constraints. Like, for example, from December 21 this year, we've had very high rainfall, what's called the La Nina effect. That effect of very heavy rains continues to impact production in our mines, and some of the mines were flooded as well. So while we had thought that we could produce 85 to 90 million tons this year, compared with 78 million last year, we have now revised our guidance to between 78 million tons to about 83 million tons. So I would say that about 8 to 10 million tons of production, which we could have very easily placed in the market at attractive prices. We've not been able to do so. But I feel that as the weather improves, which is likely from August this year, as the La Nina clears, we should be able to revert to normal production.
Okay, so in the next 5 months from now,
we will maximize our production to the extent that we can. And our company is actually focused on fulfilling the requirements of PLN. And that meeting the DMO is our primary commitment. And once we have met that, we export.
So what is Bumi Resources' commitment to fulfill the needs for domestic needs?
We supply and meet our domestic commitment. We prioritize domestic sales over exports. And because of the heavy rains which began from December, we have actually, even though we produced less, we have met and even exceeded domestic requirements, even at the cost of exports.
Okay, is it enough what we have now for domestic needs?
We have enough. I mean, we should have enough. And I think the government is taking steps to stabilize the system and make it equally applicable to everybody. So they have proposed various schemes, and I think you will recall in January, there was also an effort to ban the export of coal because it was required domestically because stocks were running low. And thereafter, they have instituted other measures to ensure that all coal companies comply with commitments, or they will be penalized. And it may affect their production quota that they get in the following year. So I think it's important. I think most countries are now focused on energy security. And I think what Indonesia is doing as a nation, since it has so much of coal, is to protect its own interests first. After all, Indonesia produces maybe well over 60% of all its power from coal.
Yeah, from coal, because it's the cheapest energy, I think.
It is the easiest feedstock to transport and convert into electricity. So about 70–80% of coal is used for electricity. And the remaining 15–20% goes to cement, goes to fertilizers, goes to other people in the mining sector, maybe goes to the steel sector.
Okay, sir, based on my data, coal mining is an extractive industry. So how much contribution or deposit royalties and taxes from Bumi Resources to the Indonesia government so far?
Well, we don't really talk too much about this, but we are easily the largest contributor
for taxes
to the national exchequer on royalty. We also pay, we have also been recognized by the Minister of Finance as being in the top 31 taxpayers in the country. And we also got an award for being a significant earner of foreign exchange by Bank Indonesia.
Okay.
And if you're asking me very specifically about royalty, we would just on royalty alone, and I'm not talking about corporate taxes and other levies. Now, if we are looking at Japan, Japan was dependent on Russia to an extent for coal. Now they are looking for alternate sources. They are our traditional markets also.
Yeah.
If we are looking at the EU, they
Germany
were
is
using
also
a bit
looking.
less of coal, but they were nevertheless still using it. I think Germany is still using 40-45% of coal for its power plants. Poland is a producer of coal, dependent on coal. Spain and Italy had moved away from coal, but are now getting back into coal. Germany, which was moving away from coal and stopping coal plants and stopping nuclear, has declared gas and nuclear as green and renewable. And they are, I believe I have heard reports that they are restarting their coal-fired power plants. And the same problem is in the UK as well. They are facing an energy crisis. There's a huge inflationary crisis. And people are very scared that the winter will be very cold and they may not have power, they may not have gas.
Okay.
So all these are contributory factors, to when you mention price. And the most unfortunate part today is that increasingly foreign institutions and banks, including some banks in Indonesia, they are not funding coal-related projects.
What do you mean not funded?
And therefore, we are unable to increase coal capacity. So we have a situation where the power demand is escalating sky high. Renewables are unable to make up because they have their own challenges of weather and storage. Right? Hydro is weather dependent. Nuclear is not available to everybody. Geothermal is geographically restricted. So what's left is coal, but unfortunately, because coal capacity is not increasing for coal, the gap between how much can be produced and what is the increasing demand is rising.
Yeah.
And this means that there is a pressure on coal price which is continuing to rise.
Yeah.
So my personal view on this is that perhaps the authorities and the banks need to be more realistic. They need to revisit their policy because during the process of energy transition to cleaner coals, to cleaner fuels, you will still need coal and gas as fallback feedstock if other forms of feedstock have problems, as we are noticing.
To be precise, what policy that need to be fixed?
Basically, banks are denying funding for coal-related projects. And unfortunately, it is the coal, which is the only one really today, which can meet the increasing power requirement. And because capacity is limited and we cannot increase production and meet the increasing demand,
Yeah.
and very few coal companies are able to increase capacity. This situation of rising demand and reducing supply can last up to the end of this decade. It can last up to 2040. It can last to 2050. So essentially, we need to be a little measured in our approach, which is we have to be realistic.
Yeah.
Which basically means that coal and gas and oil need to coexist with renewables, with nuclear, with hydro, with geothermal, and each one supports each other.
Okay.
But the most reliable feedstock continues to be coal. And because there is a green hysteria around coal being dirty, many banks, many institutions, have now fallen back and said, we are not going to fund it.
Yeah.
We are not going to invest in the coal sector. I think yesterday I also read a report that a local bank has said this to another coal company here. Now, we just need to revisit the wisdom of the policy. Yes, definitely there is a need to move towards cleaner energy.
Yeah.
But it is not possible to do that overnight. So until that period of 10, 20, 30 years of transition to get to the right feedstock mix, which is clean, the two, fossil fuels as well as non-fossil fuels, need to coexist and grow. Because following the pandemic impact has reduced.
Yeah.
Countries are now getting back to growth.
Yeah.
And when countries go back to growth, the power demand escalates.
Yeah.
Now, if the power demand escalates, now the feedstocks are few. There are just 4 or 5 feedstock that can do it. And if you have the Ukraine-Russia conflict superimposed on it, it creates further challenges.
What will happen if China and Taiwan become conflict? Is it gonna...
I hope it does not happen.
But does it will bring impact to the coal industry?
Taiwan is a consumer of coal, and China is the largest producer of coal. It consumes almost 3.5 billion to 4 billion tons and hardly exports.
Hardly exports.
Consumes most of it domestically and actually imports coal. But currently I'm told they are buying from Russia and all that, so maybe the impact is less.
Yeah.
And they've got their own internal issues.
Okay.
Which is depressing consumption.
Okay. So, sir, previously...
But it will not be desirable to have a China-Taiwan conflict like Russia-Ukraine.
Hopefully.
It will further upset the world order, which is already disturbed. And it will create even more
disaster
problems of inflation, of costs.
Agree.
And of a realignment, of world order.
Yeah, even worse than the impact from Ukraine
Definitely,
and
because
Russia.
EU is already under pressure.
Yeah.
And they have been told that in the past you have only looked inwards, you have not looked outwards as to what is happening elsewhere in the world. But now you are wanting all our help,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. So previously we talked about Bumi Resources commitment for the government. Now I'm asking about Bumi Resources commitment for the community around the coal fields.
Can I ask you a question?
Sorry, yes?
Have you visited a coal mine?
No.
Would you like to visit one?
Yes, I wish I could.
All right, we'll arrange
Will
one.
you bring me?
Yes.
Okay, noted.
It's a commitment. So KPC and Arutmin. KPC was owned by Rio Tinto and BP. We acquired it in 2003. Arutmin was owned by BHP and we acquired it in 2001.
Okay.
In 2003, we were producing 25 million tons of coal from these two coal mines. Today, we can produce 90 million tons from these coal mines.
With the same space.
It organically, the same two mines. Which means, as Indonesians, we've taken over multinational owned companies and we have grown output by a factor of 3 or 4 times. And we believe that it is not possible to grow at this rate without looking after our own employees and people, without caring for the environment, without having proper CSR, and without having environmental pollution and climate sensitivity controls, including emissions. So We have been doing this even before the awareness of ESG and climate issues, which are recent issues that have come up. We have been doing this as part of our DNA from the time we acquired these coal mines. They already had a pedigree of previous owners who had very good practices. And what we've done is we have upscaled production by 4 times, but we have also maybe improved our ESG and climate by sensitivity by about 7 or 8 times.
Yeah.
Earlier, we would report all this internally. I mean, we weren't very public about what we were doing to the outside public. But what we have been doing, we have now started collating.
What is that?
Collating means that we've been preparing reports. We have been educating our investors that, look, this is what we do. We are recognized as the top sustainability report producers in the country. We have an annual sustainability report that comes out every year, not just for our coal mines, but also for Bumi, where we do separate activities. We assign this the highest priority, and the board is deeply involved, and they get a report every time we have a board meeting or we have a joint board meeting. And this also forms part of the bonus structure for employees in the Bumi group. So basically, our awareness is very high, and we have taken so many initiatives on environmental issues, whether it is reclaiming, whether it is replanting trees.
Is that kind part of CSR?
It's part of our ESG.
ESG.
Now, CSR is a related issue, but it is different. It is how do we look after our people and how do we look after the community.
Yeah.
Okay?
So what
Now, KPC, Arutmin and Bumi, they employ about 20,000 people. So they have families. We provide housing, we provide them help, we provide services for the community. We provide even our polluted water from the coal mines when we have stopped our coal mines. We purify the water, make it potable, and that potable water is also supplied to the kampungs where our people live. Now, overall, we are managing the well-being of about 250,000 people. So you can imagine, to manage a community of 250,000 people, of which 20,000 are direct employees and indirect employees, and contractors and others, we have to be extremely responsible and excel in ESG, sustainability, climate sensitivity, emissions control. And not only that, when you talk CSR, we know that coal is a finite resource. One day the reserves will finish.
Yeah.
But the kampung and our community will still be there.
Yeah.
So we are also providing vocational services that once Bumi or KPC or Arutmin ultimately stop mining 20, 30 years ago, what will the community do?
Yeah.
They will have an economic fallback, where we are sending children for scholarships abroad, or scholarships for universities. We are educating people. We are providing vocational skills. We are looking after families. We are protecting the wildlife. We are looking after the orangutans. We are investing in there. Essentially, I can take you through what we do. We do everything. We spend a fair amount of money, but we don't gift the money. What we do is we do projects.
Yeah, we do projects. Okay.
Whether it's reclamation, we are also looking at hybrids. We are looking at, even on reclaimed land, whether we can put up solar panels and plants and those kind of things.
Okay, so to close this, what is your outlook for the coal industry in the middle of commodity super cycle?
See, a commodity super cycle is defined as rising demand
Yeah.
for 10 years, right? Now, nobody could have forecast even 3 years ago before the pandemic what the world will look like 10 years later,
Yeah, agree.
right? During the pandemic, growth has fallen. Globally, it has fallen with the lockdowns and lack of industrial activity slowing down. After the pandemic, growth is picking up. Now, when growth is picking up, what drives growth? Basically, it is humans and prosperity and industrial activity. So the demand for products has gone up, the demand for power has gone up, the demand for resources and metals has gone up. Renewables has created a new set of demands for storage and for metals and for mining services. People are talking about EVs, electric vehicles, they're talking about batteries for electric vehicles. Now, everything is moving at an accelerated pace. So we've had the pandemic, then we've had the energy crisis, then we've had nationalism coming with regard to resources. Then we've had the unfortunate Russia-Ukraine situation. Now, the effect of that, I don't think can be reversed in 6 months or 1 year, even if the war stops. The long-term effects of that will be 5 or 10 years.
Agree.
And like you asked the question about China and Taiwan, if that also happens, I think the effect may not be 5 or 10 years, the effect may be 15 or 20 years with a new world order. So when we talk about a commodity super cycle, we are talking about conventional economics and growth. What we are seeing today is that coal, which was priced at $48 per ton in 2016 when we did our restructuring, like you mentioned, has crossed $400.
Yeah.
What was the coal price 1 year ago? It was well below 100. What is it today? 350 to 450. Now, what are the economics of use of the, at what price can coal reach to become uneconomic? If you compare it with gas, at the way the gas prices are going, even if coal reaches $500 per ton, it is still economic to use coal.
Oh, really?
So when you talk about commodity super cycle, an impact is also on metals. Because when you have growth, you have higher steel production. When you have higher steel production, you need more power. When you have more power, you need more feedstock. You need more coal. Right? Now, what happens when there is uncertainty like today, which is the Ukraine-Russia impact, the China-Taiwan, the US-China relationship, the EU coming under pressure, they may lose some of their dominant position.
The heat waves.
Weather conditions are changing. A lot of action is taking place. Now, in a situation like this, what will an average investor or an average household do? Now, we have inflation, which is just hitting the roof. So they'll be looking for their primary what you call requirements to live. You got to live first, you got to eat first, you got to have a roof over your head, you got to have a job, you've got to be able to pay for your expenses. And today, unfortunately, what is happening, inflation is so high that people don't really know where it will go, if it will go higher and higher. So things that we took for granted in the past, we cannot take for granted anymore. What we used to spend on in the past, we really cannot spend on everything that we did in the past. Now, in the process of correction, we never know what can happen. Right now, it's high inflation. But many economies, whether it is in Europe, whether it is in the US, whether it is even Japan, whether it is China, all of them are now looking at controlling inflation. What are they doing? They're raising the central bank rates.
Yeah.
Now, what happens when you shrink growth? There'll be the reverse effect of a demand contraction, and that can lead to stagflation, which is, it can even lead to a recession.
Yeah.
Right? So we don't know which way it will go. Now, many governments are taking steps, but they still don't know how bad the situation is.
Yeah. As you said before, there's no forecast about what's going to happen.
I don't think that one can forecast a commodity super cycle. The thing is, what is going to happen to growth? Right now it's inflation, so people are still producing and eating. Governments are beginning to subsidize. Indonesian government has responded by windfall taxes. I mean, like in coal, there is already, the royalty rates have gone up. There's been some adjustment of taxes. And I think there have been moves that we have seen in CPO and all that. But at the end of the day, you know, one will need to grip inflation and control it. Right now, Indonesia is relatively insulated because it has high resource, which you can export, for which there is a demand in other countries. But all these are basically finite resources. As you mine more and more, your reserves come down. So what the government is doing here is also very good, which is how do you create jobs, right?
Yeah,
they are looking at value-added investments.
Yes.
Even in coal, we are looking to go downstream. Coal downstream, how can you manufacture and convert coal into maybe replacing import of oil products. We are going into coal gasification, going downstream into methanol. Government is encouraging that. We may do a similar thing in Arutmin. We are doing it in KPC. We are looking at the renewable space, the green and blue energy. We are looking at how we can increase production of coal within the constraints that we have. So we are getting more equipment. We are trying to see what we can do on rain mitigation measures, right? How we can, keep current demand for coal, which is rising. See, we are also facing questions like how much are you exporting to Europe? They are in trouble. How much are you exporting to other places? We said, listen, our priority is domestic. We are hit by rain. We already have backlogs of export orders. We have to catch up. Once we have caught up, then we can look at new markets and new.
Okay. Wow, sir, there's a lot of interesting I got from you. Thank you very much for this discussion. I'm so sorry, but because we have lack of time, but I am sure we're gonna meet you again on the next
I look forward
moment.
to that, because as a company and as a person, we are very transparent.
Yes.
And you're most welcome to dial in, or you're most welcome to send a message in case there's any clarity that you want.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We are available. And come and visit our coal mine.
Thank you very much, sir. Ya, itu dia tadi pemirsa diskusi saya bersama dengan Bumi Resources. Jangan kemana-mana, terus saksikan CNBC Indonesia Beyond Business.